Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Yuri, and together with me is Philip from ID Media to show you how the integration between memoQ and FirstSpirit looks like. So today we'll see how we can translate content that we receive from FirstSpirit. If you don't know FirstSpirit, in a sentence, FirstSpirit is a content management system focused on providing the best possible digital experience. So if you're looking to set up an ultimate digital experience ecosystem, make sure to check them out. And I would assume that most of you know memoQ, but if you don't, so memoQ is a highly flexible translation and revision environment where you can translate basically anything, so alone or together with your colleagues. So those are the strongest areas that we cover, and they are flexibility and collaboration. And in the demo that we prepared together with Philip, we'll show you how you can, or how streamlined and easy it is to request translations in FirstSpirit. So this is the part that Philip will show. I'll show you then how you can translate those parts in memoQ and then send them back to FirstSpirit, so to complete the round trip. This demo will last about 20 minutes, 25, and after that we'll have some time for questions. So if you have a question, make sure to write it down in the chat box of the Zoom app, and we can discuss them after the demo. Or if it will be a more complex question, we can send you the answer through the email. The recording of this webinar will also be available on our YouTube channel, so you or your colleagues can watch it later. So, and with that being said, we can now move on to the demo, where we'll start as the content managers or project managers in FirstSpirit. So we'll request the translation there. So without further ado, Philip, I let the stage be yours. And now I believe I can stop sharing, and you can, I believe, share the screen.
Perfect. So there we go. You should all see my screen now. And what I'll do now is I'll give you a brief overview of the demonstration. First of all, I will start with a typical situation and a typical approach to translating content with FirstSpirit, or basically another CMS, just to give you the broad overview of how it's being done at the moment, or usually being done. And thereafter, I would just point out our approach to this problem, or to the situation of translating and managing content translations. And after that, I'll just show you how it's done and how easy it is. And we will show you the round trip, so that we fill in, we give you some live material and on how it's done, how it's actually being done. So the typical situation is usually, for you all, you know that, we have different content projects, we have different departments providing the content with different editors, you have many content pages, and you have many target languages. Well, so far so good. This is the basic setup, and now we have to translate the content. And the typical approach is usually, which I call a separation of concern, to each tool, to each their best tool. So we have a content management system, FirstSpirit, we have the translation management system, the translation memory system, memoQ, and question is how to interact, because those are great tools, and if used to their full scale, it's quite a cost-efficient approach of translating content and interacting. But there are usually some problems involved, and among those, I'll just point out two. There is the fragmentation of tools. The moment you have more than one, you have to make sure that they can communicate in a very easy way and in a flexible way, and you have workflows which are often a bit crude, and they require expert knowledge. But usually these workflows developed over time, and they were established because they, at the time of their creation, they were the best way of getting things done. And A typical workflow usually looks like this. You have content creators who edit content. Those content creators inform, which I call a translation administrator. The translation administrator exports the target content. He or she imports it into memoQ, and after some time receives a notification that the content has been translated. They then go and download the translations and import the document into FirstSpirit again. And as you can see here, it's quite a bloated process because it involves many, many manual steps, and communication is essential. Essential in 2 points. At 2 points, first, the content creators and the translation administrator, they need communication. What has to be translated from which target source into which target language. And then we have the communication between the translators and the translation administrator. And afterwards, of course, the administrator who then, well, gives an okay that the translated document has been imported again. And maybe there might be a content freeze involved as well, because once the page is about to be translated, it cannot, or it should not be changed for that time. And as you can see in the listing, it's quite easy to spot a single point of failure here. And when we depict a perfect process, we can come up with this. We have content creators, of course, editing their content. We have the content creators request translations and then simply continue working. It's a straightforward process and it requires no expert knowledge at all. It's quite an intuitive one. And of course, there's no single point of failure. And such a process can be put in a perfect environment. We have workflows for typical scenarios right out of the box. And we have extension points for further customization if necessary. And we give translation status feedback where it is beneficial. So we allow for a maximum transparency here. And with that being said, I just start right with the demo. So this is a sample project. And in this scenario, I will be translating, or we will be translating content from English to German. And as you can see here, we have the not available. This is where I go. And you can see here, there's no content available. I switch to English now and show you the content that we are about to translate. So in this scenario, we assume that this is the page we want to translate. And as I said earlier, we have a quite easy process for that. So we just go to workflows and I select translate this page. And now a workflow window pops up, and the only thing I have to do now is to specify what I want to have. This is basically me selecting source and target languages because, well, we need to, this is the minimum information we need. I select memoQ. I can now, as part of my translation request, decide if it's an urgent one or if it is a regular one. A regular one is just subject to internal quote measurement. So let's say I will only start after five translation requests have been received. This is just to manage the workload. But a more urgent translation, for example, is a press release that has to be translated right away because it's urgent. And in this scenario, I will just stick to the urgent translation. I can now even select a workflow that might be executed after a translation has been imported into FirstSpirit again. So to really allow for a very complex overall workflow if necessary. I can give a date until which I want this content to be translated, which I'll do here now. Let's say end of the month. Click OK. I can even decide whether I want to have a preview page or not. A preview page is basically another version of this page, which will be created and uploaded alongside this translation, this translatable document, just to provide further information about the the overall context of the text that the translator is about to translate. And I can then specify what I want to translate. For example, we have the page itself. This usually consists of, since it is a web page, it usually consists of headlines, metadata, meta descriptions, etc. And I can even narrow the translation process down to specific sections. So if there are some sections that I do not want to translate, I can just, well, unselect them or deselect them. But in this context, I'll just translate all sections because they all keep relevant data. I can now also set or check whether I want to receive email throughout the translation process. This usually means that we will inform you when the translation status changes. Let's say when it is in translation, or if it has been imported into FirstSpirit again. So you get notifications via email, because translation can take some time, and the more you have, the more, well, so we just want to make sure that you are up to date whenever something changes. It's even possible to provide further information. This is just depending on the type of content, and if some further information need to be given, there is definitely an option to do that. But for now, I'll just leave that empty. And since I've selected everything, I just hit translation, request translation, wait for the workflow to finish, and there we go. It says the workflow was successful. Now I click on OK, and I can now continue editing my content or doing going to another project. But basically, I'm done at this point. There is no further workflow that I have to do. I can just continue editing different pages now. So this is basically the workflow. It's not very complicated. It's quite straightforward, and each workflow of those that are available here, they work the same way. You always get a form that you have to fill in, select source target language, and then be done. And now there's of course a question: where's my feedback? It's quite easy. Well, to monitor the translation process or translation status along the way, we provide three means to do that. The first one can be found here, and it's just a search report, which allows me to search for particular pages. I can limit my search request to source or target language, and even to a translation status. In our scenario, I'm quite interested in all those pages that are in translation. So I'll select that and see there's my jobs page, my career page. If I click on it, I even get further information, what is being translated exactly. And no wonder, there's my page, there's the section A, and there's the section B. Click on close, and if I just refresh the page, what you will find here is on the lower left corner, there's a small icon that has changed from light gray now to dark black. If I click on it, a nice window expands, and it also gives me information that says it's in translation from English to German, and the status change will happen today. So if I browse my project, all those pages that have relevant information, make them quite available and accessible right here out of the box. And if I need further information about those, I can always use this report here. I talked about two ways, but there is a third one. Let's say I did that. I requested this translation, went to have dinner, to have lunch, and my colleague now thought, because we did not talk to one another, that my colleague wants to request or to translate the page as well. So if they do that, they will also execute this workflow. And what you'll see now is that there is status information available, those that have not been available before when I did it, because there has not been a translation request before. And this status tab now gives me information, all those actually that are available. And it says that, oh, there is a status and the page, and those two sections are in translation already. So since I don't need to, well, to submit them again, I can click on cancel and be done. So it's quite transparent here. And at those points where it is necessary and beneficial, we provide those information as well. And since I'm done now, I have to basically wait for the translation to finish. I will hand over to Jürgen now, so he can show you how it's being done in memoQ.
Okay, so let's flip over to memoQ. So the point of this integration is automation. And when Philip submitted the request, this request already created a project in memoQ, so we don't have to do this manually. So here we see this project appearing. And now what I can do is I can open it. And here you can already see that this file or this part was assigned to somebody. So how do you do this? In the background of this whole process, there is a very powerful tool which is called a template. So in the template, you can define a lot of things. So you can define who will translate which language, for instance, who will do the revision. You can also define which translation memories will be used, which glossaries will be used. So all of that, you will basically save like 80% or 90% of clicking if you use an integration or automation based on a template. So here, we actually don't have to do anything. As Philip already pointed out, you will be notified when a job is waiting for you, so you don't have to monitor anything. The request will pop up automatically. So now what we can do is we can check how the translation could be done or the revision could be done. Now, over here, we have two options how you edit this content. So either you work on a local client or you work in the browser. So both ways is possible. And now let me show you how this can be done locally. So we'll be now downloading this part of the text and see what we have to do here. So this is now our file. And here we see that the content was already prepared. Now a quick tour of the interface if you're new to it. So on the left side, we see the source text. In the middle, we see the translation that is provided to us. If it's not there, we need to enter it. In the bottom part, we will see the preview. And on the far right side, we will see different matches that can help us with the translation. So what we can do here now, or what you can see here, is that, for instance, in this preview, we see that this is some sort of a strange file. Actually, it's an XML. So if you would receive such a file to translate from scratch, this would be quite problematic or messy. But because we have a nice filter for it here, you only need to translate those black parts here. And what is good about this, if you have some strange format, you can always select which parts will you here translate and which not. So for the translators and the reviewers, it's very easy. So they don't have to bother with all the unnecessary parts. They just focus on the translation or revision, so nothing else. So and what we can do here, for instance, now, here we see the text. We can now edit it. Now let me show you, if you find something very, very important, you can enter that into the terminology database, so into the term base. So for instance, let's say we see this term, okay, it's very important. I would like that all the other colleagues would also use it. And they should translate it as Karrierenherausforderungen. So how do we store this into the glossary? It's pretty easy. So you right click on the selection and then you add this term. Now, why would you want to do this? So first, if I go now back and forth, you see that this term is highlighted in blue. This means that it's stored somewhere. It's actually in the glossary here. So what can I do with this? If I, for instance, write another term instead of this one, like just something like that. If I try to confirm this, you see that there will be a little lightning here appearing, which will tell you that we haven't used the term from the glossary. So there are tools that help you maintain consistency with the critical terminology that your company uses. So what can we do? We just remove this term that is not that should be used, and we start typing the long term. And the typing assistant will help us here, so we don't have to think about it. You will avoid typos and just continue with the remaining part. Okay, another thing that you could find interesting here as the translator or as the reviewer, you can, for instance, perform searches in different locations. So you can use the translation memory to see where you have translated something. You can check glossaries. You can check machine translation providers, but you can check also your preferred websites. So for instance, if I would like to look up this term in our preferred or in my preferred website, I can start a memoQ web search. So this will then open my website, and here I have, let's say, DeepL's website where I can find this translation. So you can configure any website basically that has some sort of a search box, and then use the translation if you find it necessary, if you find it useful. So you can also definitely do corrections here. So if you want to do corrections, you can switch on track changes. So here, if I go under review, I can switch on track changes and then do the corrections. Yeah. Like so. You can also post comments. If you click on this bubble here, you can post a comment. And this will be then available for your other colleagues. You can definitely also use a lot of filters. So if you are working on a logon document, you can easily find, for instance, sentences that contain certain terms, or you can also find sentences that were not yet translated. So a lot of options are here, but you can make it really easy. You can make it really easy for the translator. So they just use the right-hand side of the page and translate what's necessary. So what I can do right now, I can highlight everything, store it into the translation memory, so confirm it basically, and then send it back to Philip so that he can get this. So I will now, and let's say I would like to accept this change. So here I can accept this change and this one as well. So similar to Word, let's say. Okay, so we are good here. And now we can close this and deliver. So there is a button, and this will then mark this job as completed. And now the file will go back to the FirstSpirit. Now you can also do the same thing in the browser interface if you want to, and that is also good, because if you have people that are new to CAD tools or in general are not dealing with translation that often, you can use the web, and there people will not need to install anything. So you just log in, you get a link, and then you edit the content there. So it's pretty convenient. And now we wait a couple of seconds or minutes till the job is done. Philip, is it already maybe with you?
Yeah, we can check.
Okay. So yeah, set the template in the background does a lot of can do a lot of things. So for instance, when I press this button, deliver and return, this can, for instance, run the quality assurance check automatically and send the report to the translator or to the reviewer or project manager, so you don't have to do this manually. You can also update translation memories if you click this button, so you can do different comparisons. So a lot of things can be done in the template. So what I typically recommend, if you're trying to set up a fully automated workflow or an automated workflow, you take a piece of paper and then you write things that are really crucial for you, that take a lot of time, and then we can come up with a template for you. So now we can check. Philip, should we switch to your screen?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let me stop sharing here.
So, although we know that the page has been translated, we would normally, if we had not opened our email inbox, we would not know whether it has been translated or not. So if I get back to my page, I can just check it here. And you see, no matches found for any pages in translation. So let's make another search and look for those that have already been imported. And we see my jobs page is already available. And we can briefly verify that by just going to the German version of this page. We see there is our Karriere menu entry, and there we have the translated text. Yeah, we also have the Dann benachrichtigen Sie, which we saw earlier. So the content has been imported without me being involved in any part. So it's quite nice, and it really happens automatically. I don't have to worry about anything. The only thing I really have to do is to make sure that I just submit the translation request, and after that, everything's been taken care of and does not require any expert knowledge or any additional tasks from me. I can just sit back and continue my work. Let's check here. The translation status indicator also says, yeah, it's translated, which we see obviously, but you can see it's quite consistent here. Yeah, and this is basically how it's done, how you can translate content from FirstSpirit using memoQ and have it all automated. And as for now, this is the entire process. And if you don't have anything to point out, I think we can go to the questions.
Okay, yes. So thank you very much, Philip. Now let's see. Okay, so how is the connection to FirstSpirit set up in memoQ? So is there a separate plugin, content connector? Do I need a license it separately, or is it included in the memoQ server? So it is a separate plugin, and you need a license for the API from our side and the API from FirstSpirit.
Yeah, but the setup is fairly simple. We provide a very nice configuration interface in which you just fill in all that is necessary. This is usually the API key, the location of the memoQ server, and then it's basically requesting all available project templates, and then it's just configuring what you need and what you need to be done, what has to be done. And after that, it's quite available nearly instantaneously in FirstSpirit and in the projects.
Okay, so we have another question from Jeremy. There are a couple of them, so I'll start with the shortest one. Does it use VS API or CMS API? I think it's VS, right, Philip?
We use both.
Right, you use both. Is there a specific project template with automated actions that is recommended for this integration? You can use the default ones that are there, but I would recommend that you customize it slightly, because related to your other question, if you can set up custom filters, that is done in the template. So yeah, define the template, define the filter, the custom filter, put it in a template and use that template for the connection between the two systems. Are there future plans for a custom preview, either XSL-based filter preview or a custom preview SDK feature for FirstSpirit or Translation Studio? So I would assume that you would like to see in the preview, instead of XML, something like the HTML part. So this, I think, theoretically could be done because we have an integration to that. I think it could actually already be done. So, but we'll probably provide some more information to all of you somehow publicly, but I think it could be done. The other thing, does the integration always generate a single jobs XML file for all the content into a given target language, or can you split this into different files for each page or section to make it easier to split the translation jobs among multiple translators and reviewers? So Philip, can you please just confirm that whenever you send a request, what will the name be consisting of?
It's really up to you and how your needs are, actually, because we support different things. Usually you have one page, let's say one FirstSpirit page, and that results in one individual XML file. So if you have 2 pages, you get 2 XML files. But it is also possible that you can take together 5 FirstSpirit pages and put them and create one XML file from them, depending on the size, for example. So it's really your option what you want to do. It's even possible to have certain parts of your project use the single XML approach, so one page, one XML file, and have another part of the project, the same project, let's say, create XML files containing several FirstSpirit pages. Both are possible, and that really depends on your needs and how you want to set up Translation Studio and want to manage your translation process. But the default setting is you have one XML file per FirstSpirit page.
Okay. Then a question from Sasha: is it possible to join segments in the content from FirstSpirit if the FirstSpirit is not segmented correctly? Yeah, you can definitely do that in the editor, or maybe even better, tweak the filter so that it will not, that certain tags will not break the segment, but will automatically be like what we call inline tags. So both options are optional. So I would recommend filter, but if something is not segmented, you can definitely merge or split or join them in the editor. Can I re-import content after modifying the segmentation rules in the online project? You can, but if you split and join the content in the editor, the rules will be, those segments that were joined or split will be imported in the original format, so we need to do it again. That's why I would recommend that you tweak this in the filter, because there it will be permanent. Okay, any other questions? Let me see, maybe something in the chat. What do we have here? Okay, so is it possible to use FirstSpirit tool with a CMS like Cosima to translate XML modules and so on? Philip, can you maybe clarify that?
At the moment, it's really FirstSpirit. So we do not support, or Translation Studio doesn't support different content management systems. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe any other questions? What does the translation? How much will the Translation Studio cost? So the prices.
It's always a good thing to ask that question, but it depends on how you use FirstSpirit. There are two options. One is hosted in the FirstSpirit, in the eSpirit cloud, and in the eSpirit cloud, it's available out of the box, and there it's on a pay-per-use base, and we have the words as a metric. Or when you have it when you host it yourself on premise, you have to get into contact with your eSpirit consultant or key account manager and just obtain a license. So these two options are available, but on the specific price, actually, I'm afraid I cannot tell you anything because I do not have the relevant information.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually, although we develop this product, it's always via eSpirit to take care of the license management.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There was a question if we can share the filter configuration. I mean, for this one, it's really out of the box. So if you use memoQ, it's there. So a default XML filter. That's nothing special to it. And then you can tweak it.
But I might add something here, because as you could see in this preview pane below at the bottom, it was a rather technical XML structure. Although it works pretty fine and we didn't tweak anything, we do support different formats. And if you do not want to use this rather technical XML format, we also support XLIF 2.0. And we also have a very simplified XML structure that is not as nested as the one you saw and has very, very limited depth node. And if you do not want to customize that one, you can also always use the other two that are available.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the next one. Are the pages in translation checked out locked in FirstSpirit, or could they be accidentally edited?
It's an important question because we do not lock your content. And it does not affect, and you can, once I submit my page and submit a translation request, I can easily edit the German content and tweak it a bit more. And once we import the translated document, the source language will not be touched in any form. So it will remain unchanged by Translation Studio, and you will keep all the changes that you did along the road. And there is no we do not need a content freeze here.
Okay. Was another one, because yeah, that's true. We currently, or memoQ currently doesn't support XLIF 2.0 yet. So Philip, is there any chance we use 1.2? That was a question.
Yes, so it does not. We do not support it out of the box. But as I told earlier, just briefly mentioned it, we do have extension points, and it is quite easy to customize and create and convert our standard or basic default XML structure into any other format you would like. Okay. I did that with XLIF 2.0 and with our simplified version, and it took me about an hour to do so. Okay.
Great, and we'll do our best to update our filter to 2.0 as soon as possible. Okay, so any other questions for now? I think we covered most of them or all of them, so it'll be good. So yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Philip or me at any time. So whether you're looking for information about FirstSpirit or memoQ or the integration, we'll be happy to assist you. So for now, I would like to thank you everyone for participating. And as said, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. So yes, thank you very much once again, and wish you a very pleasant afternoon, and talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.